We'll start our program. Good morning, everyone. On this really turned out to be a very beautiful day. And on behalf of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, welcome to this very special occasion as we dedicate the inlet and outlet tower here at Diamond Valley Lake in honor of our former General Counsel, Gregory Taylor. And I just wanted to say I knew Greg very well during my years at MWD, and I think I've followed his whole, was it 7 years that as our chief lawyer. And he's looking down from heaven. One thing about Greg, you have to understand, he wants things done his way. Things have to be on time. There's no changing rules. And he was bigger than life. And when he entered a room, he just absorbed everything. And so in his honor, we have to do things on time and be out of here on time. I'm Tony Fellow. I represent the Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District on Metropolitan's board, and I serve as chair of the board's facilities naming committee. And before I turn over our program to our general manager, I'd like to welcome all of you here, and I'd like to recognize some special guests. All of you are special. I think all of the people I'm going to announce are special today. And first of all, MWD directors here is our chair, Adon Ortega. Give a I do have to tell you, the most important questions I have about Adon dealing with water is, do I wear a tie today or not? But I wore it in honor of Greg. He was always dressed. Brenda Denisette. Director Carl Secco. Thank you. And Director Dennis Erdman is here. And we also have our special director, a former director, Glenn Peterson. And we have Joe Grindstack, director of Eastern Municipal Water District. We have some legislative reps here today. Dylan Calloway from the office of Assemblyman Jeff Gonzalez, Assemblyman 36. And we have some current people from management with MWD. Devin Upadhyay, our general manager. He'll be speaking. Marcia Scully, our general counsel. Dee Zink, assistant general manager. And John Benarski. I didn't see John. There he is. I didn't recognize you with the hat on today. We also have some former general managers, Ron Gastella, a good friend, and Jeff Keitlinger, one of the longest serving general managers. And we have some former employees. Lily Shabati is here. Shabati. You should see how I screwed up names as a professor when I had 300 in a class. Founder of who's head of our real property group, and Brent Yamasaki, former chief of operations, and someone very special. It was good to see him today. He did a lot to get this Diamond Valley going. Dennis Major, who is the project manager for DVL. Thank you for being here. You look good. You should come back to work. And we have the Taylor family here, which you're going to hear them speak. Miss Nancy Taylor, the wife of Greg. And Linda Taylor is here. And there's Lorraine Taylor. And Paul Taylor. Thank you all for being here today. And so right now, I would like to introduce our general manager, Devin Upadhyay, who will talk about this project too.
Thank you, Director Fellow. Well, thank you, Director Fellow, and everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you so much for being with us today to honor our former General Counsel, Greg Taylor, and his lasting contributions to Metropolitan and Southern California. To start off, I'd like to start by saying that we gratefully acknowledge and all of the native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant native communities who make this their home today. It's wonderful to see the Taylor family here this morning, and so many friends and colleagues here with us. I also want to acknowledge Director Steve Fessel from the city of Anaheim here. It's great to see you here, Director. Including two of our former general managers. It's fantastic to see Ron and Jeff here also. But above all else, I want to invite you, or actually recognize the wonderful lake behind us, Diamond Valley Lake. It doesn't just provide a beautiful backdrop for this morning and this event, but it reflects the water resilience that Greg and many of the people that are here today actually help to build for the communities that we serve. California's new water year actually started last week on October 1st. And I can say that we are prepared, very well prepared, to return to dry conditions if they come back. They will eventually, but we're set very well to move into those conditions again. And that's thanks in no small part to the foresight and perseverance of Greg and these other metropolitan leaders that ultimately oversaw the development of Diamond Valley Lake. As you look at it today, it's just over 95% full. Indeed, Metropolitan is on track to end our calendar year overall with the highest storage levels that we've ever had, just about 3.9 million acre feet. And that's critical because we know climate change is driving weather whiplash, and the watersheds seem to be alternating between extreme wet and dry conditions in a way that we haven't seen before. It's been increasingly challenging to predict how rain and snowfall will come from year to year. After a historically dry period in Northern California that you all know led to severe reductions on our state water project supplies from 2020 through 21 and 22, we actually just experienced a third year in a row of above normal conditions. That allowed deliveries from the California Aqueduct, which then moved through our inland feeder to directly refill Diamond Valley Lake and increase the stored water here and elsewhere. Meanwhile, 2 decades of drier conditions have significantly reduced the inflows into the Colorado River. And Diamond Valley Lake has actually helped us manage through those dry conditions. Metropolitan will continue to need that flexibility as we face shifting regulatory requirements and agreements that may affect the reliability of our imported water supplies. We're having to get comfortable operating in and planning for uncertainty. This reservoir has been and will continue to be phenomenally important as we manage through that uncertainty. But looking ahead, we know that we're going to need more tools, and that's why our climate adaptation master plan process is so important. We know that Metropolitan is going to have to invest in infrastructure and other programs to ensure that we can continue to have safe and reliable water for our future generations. But what projects and what programs make the most sense in this rapidly changing environment? The Camp for Water process is really designed to help Metropolitan's current and future leaders balance those competing demands and make informed decisions, even as uncertainty continues to cloud the horizon. There are difficult choices for us ahead, but nothing's new for Metropolitan. In fact, the work of committed public servants and wise leaders like Greg Taylor, because of that, the district has been able to overcome its challenges. And I'm confident that we will continue to do so. So today's dedication is a reminder of who we are, how we got here, and who we need to be as we face these challenges ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. And Mr. Fessel, sorry I didn't get your name to introduce you because he'll be mad at me. There he is. And also, John Palenkas is here representing the Taylor family. Thank you for being here. I want to add to what Devin has been talking about, the importance of Diamond Valley Lake and the tower that we're going to be talking about today. And it really is a privilege to stand here today in front of you at Diamond Valley Lake. And as Devin said, the facility that has become the cornerstone of water reliability that Metropolitan provides for Southern California. And there's so many things I could talk to you about for hours today about how this came about, and the challenges were horrendous that Mr. Taylor had to put up with. And but we got through it with Jeff and Taylor at the helm. With this reservoir was complete. When this reservoir was completed 25 years ago, it doubled the region's surface water storage capacity with the ability to store more than 800,000 acre feet of water. And it's impossible to overstate the reservoir to communities that we serve. Not only does it provide critical reliability when we swing from wet years to dry years, it also gives Southern California a lifeline within the region in the event of an earthquake or other emergency it cut off our imported water supplies. And at the heart of this reservoir is the tower here, a remarkable feat of engineering. This 270-foot tower is what makes Diamond Valley Lake function. It's the gateway through which the waters flow in times of abundance and out during times of need. Without it, Diamond Valley Lake would not be a powerful tool for water supply reliability that it is today. This structure is both a symbol and safeguard, a reminder of the foresight and decisions of our former leaders of what projects the water reliability of Metropolitan delivers for millions of people for generations. The idea of linking leadership and lasting infrastructure is exactly what the board's facilities naming committee is all about. As chair of the committee, I can tell you these decisions are not done lightly. We only put forward recommendations for individuals who have made extraordinary and lasting contributions to Metropolitan's mission. Naming a facility after one of our past leaders is one of the highest honors we can bestow. It is our way of ensuring that the work of those who shaped Metropolitan, their vision, their guidance, and their leadership will be remembered alongside the very structures that secure our region's future. That is why today we celebrate and dedicate the Inlet Outlet Tower to Gregory Taylor, who served as Metropolitan's general manager when Diamond Valley Lake was built and helped navigate Metropolitan through some of its most complex and challenging decisions. And they were very challenging. And it's only fitting that this name be attached to this structure, a tower that has stood and will continue to stand for generations, supporting the people of Southern California, just as Greg supported Metropolitan through those many years in getting this project built. And to talk more about Greg and his legacy and career, I'm honored to introduce to you our current general manager, Marcy Edwards, or excuse me, R.C. Scully, Marcy Edwards. Marcy Edwards was a former director who did a good job, who helped build this too. Marcia.
I'm very happy to be here with you today to help dedicate the DVL Inlet Outlet Tower in recognition of Metropolitan's former General Counsel, Greg Taylor. As has been stated, we wouldn't be here and the DVL wouldn't be here if not for his tenacity and tireless efforts to get the reservoir built. Greg served as Metropolitan's General Counsel from 1993 until his retirement in 2000. Before coming to Metropolitan, Greg spent 30 years in the California Attorney General's office and worked on many cases for natural resources and environmental divisions. As chief counsel for the State Lands Commission, he was part of the major land acquisitions for the Lake Tahoe Conservancy and the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. Greg hired me to work at Metropolitan, and my first assignment was working on DVL project. He also impacted me well before either of us were at Metropolitan. For a time, I was the chief outside counsel for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. Unbeknownst to me, they did not follow all the rules in hiring outside counsel, including as a state agency, getting the approval of the AG's office. After several months working at the Conservancy, my paychecks stopped. My boss professed to have no idea why that happened. So I made it my mission to figure out why I wasn't getting paid and to get checks started again. Eventually, I spoke to the state controller's office, who explained to me that the resource division of the AG's office had stopped my paychecks because the Conservancy had not followed all the rules in hiring me. And the person who stopped my paychecks was Greg Taylor. As stated, Greg was the lead proponent of the construction of DVL. And working with Dennis Majors, he managed to get the reservoir permitted and built in record time, unheard of for a project of its scope. The permitting was completed without a challenge, and not a single lawsuit was filed to stop the construction. This is very rare for a project of this size and scope, and this was due in part to a strategy that avoided the requirement for federal permits. Greg's thoughtful approach to project permitting and mitigation involved working collaboratively with NGOs and the local community. This also paid off, as there was widespread support for the project among the environmental community. In addition to being smart and thoughtful, Greg was a force of nature. He was passionate about the completion of DVL and the companion inland feeder project. It was his passion and dedication and drive, as much as his legal strategy, that resulted in the permitting and completion of the project in record time. It is particularly fitting that the IO Tower is named after Greg. The initial water from the Colorado River Aqueduct flowed into the reservoir through the IO Tower in 1999. There was another event for the opening of the tap, and this was an exciting event at Metropolitan, also attended by many dignitaries and staff. It took until 2003 to fill the reservoir. Greg was also instrumental in Metropolitan's decision to purchase 3,700 acres for the Santa Rosa Plateau Ecological Reserve to serve as project mitigation. This was some of the most sensitive and productive natural habitat remaining in California. At the time, it was permitted for development of a golf course and housing. Through Greg's vision and leadership, the land was instead set aside in a permanent conservation easement. The action forever protected rare vernal pools, Engelmann oak, woodlands, and endangered species. Greg was a lifelong environmentalist. He was proud of the reserve and loved to show it off to people by driving them along the trails. And they are trails. And so there were incidents where bad things happened to cars and an occasional rescue was required. The creation of the reserve was integral to the creation of larger southwestern Riverside County multi-species reserve. At that time, this was an innovative approach to species protection, protecting many species at once rather than focusing on a single species at a time. It was a smarter approach to ecological preservation, and Greg embraced it. By the time he retired in 2000, he had helped Metropolitan establish 4 multi-species habitat conservation plans. Greg's leadership and influence also helped to advance other important metropolitan priorities. He helped negotiate the permit to allow much of the inland feeder to be constructed beneath U.S. Forest Service lands, as well as necessary land acquisitions and exchanges with the Forest Service and the California Department of Fish and Game for environmental mitigation of inland feeder. He played a key role in the construction of Metropolitan's headquarters at Union Station. Greg was the epitome of a public servant. He worked very hard. He used considerable talent, intellect, and passion to advance projects that make California a better, more sustainable place to live for many years in the future. It is an honor to be here to help celebrate Greg's contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. We're very fortunate to have the general manager who worked closely with Greg in bringing about Diamond Valley Lake, and it's my friend Ron Gustellum, who served from 1999 to 2004. Ron.
Thank you, Director Fellow. Good morning. It is indeed a beautiful day. I've been looking forward very much to this day, and I'm especially pleased to be sharing it with the Taylor family. I knew Greg Taylor well. He was among the most accomplished lawyers I ever had the privilege to work with. He was a serious man that well understood the importance of his work. He was a passionate advocate for the district, but always looked for common ground in pursuit of the public good. I began working with Greg when I became the district's general manager. Among the highest priorities set by the board of directors was to complete Diamond Valley Lake on time and within budget. It was a massive project, and since the construction of the Colorado River Aqueduct, one of, if not the most important additions to the Met system. But getting the project completed and online was certainly a great accomplishment, with notable contributions by many, including some of you here today. The truth is, the truth is, the heavy lifting was done by Greg Taylor, Carl Baranki, and the board of directors that envisioned, planned, and moved the project forward. Today, I commend this board of directors for its recognition of one of the most influential general counsels in the history of the district. From my perspective as a general manager, he possessed what I valued most in a lawyer: finding creative and legal ways to do whatever the district needed. I also want to commend the board for publicly and in a very meaningful way recognizing that it takes many talents and ideas to support and further the mission of the district. This was demonstrated most recently with the naming of the Water Quality Lab after Dr. Michael McGuire. The welcome message to everyone, including today's and future generations of Metropolitan employees, is that Metropolitan values and celebrates extraordinary initiative and accomplishment from every quarter, not just from the general manager or the board leaders at the top. Not since the renaming of Lake Matthews after our illustrious first general counsel and architect of the MWD Act, W.B. Matthews, has such an honor been bestowed on a general counsel of the district. For his accomplishments of historic importance to Metropolitan and Southern California, Greg Taylor very deservedly now stands in the same company.
Thank you very much, Ron. I'm also very happy to tell you that we have another former general manager, perhaps the longest serving general manager in Met history, Jeffrey Keitlinger, who also worked closely with Greg Taylor in bringing about Diamond Valley Lake. And before that, he was our general counsel. And my friend, Jeff Keitlinger, I think is one of the great GMs.
Thank you, Tony. It's a real pleasure to be here celebrating this moment for Greg. On a personal note, I probably would not have been at Met but for Greg. I was wavering on accepting the job recruitment. It was a pay cut, and my wife was strongly urging me not to accept it. And then I had lunch with Greg, and we talked about Greg being a force of nature and very persuasive. And I remember calling up my wife and saying, she goes, "How did he take it?" And I was like, well, I've got some news. But he was right. It changed my career. It changed my life. Coming to Met was the best decision I ever made. And it's very fitting that we name something here at DVL for him, because as people have been talking about, it was a team. Hundreds of people worked on it, lots of talented people, lots of people here. But I always felt at the end of the day, there were two indispensable parties, Dennis Majors and Greg Taylor. But for those two, I really don't know that you would have had the project done. Certainly not in the way it was done and the time it was done. Marcia talked about the permitting strategy. When Carl Baranki and the board came up with the idea of that we needed storage coming out of the 89 to 91 drought, 92, they decided to do this. Carl brings on Greg as a special advisor. And if you ever had lunch with Carl and Greg, they were truly the odd couple. Carl would tease and needle Greg, and eventually Greg would explode. And then Carl would sit back and laugh. And they would do it every time. But Greg comes on board, and he's just a force of nature. He drives. This is not an exaggeration. For 6 years, he drove the 90-mile drive from downtown LA here at least once a week. He burned through at least 3 Crown Victorias, bottomed out one in Santa Rosa Plateau. If you were a city council member or an assembly member, you're coming on a tour, and he'd throw you in the car and bring you out here. And as staff, he would make you come with him sometimes too. And it was a white knuckle ride. He got these Crown Vics. The reason he got the Crown Vics was because he had learned that the chief of police and the captains of police force in LA drove Crown Vics. Johnny Grant in the fleet services unit, Greg assigned him and tasked him to trick out his car to look exactly like a police chief car, complete with 3 dummy antennas on back, like the police did. Greg was convinced that the reason he could go 95 miles an hour to DVL and only get a ticket like twice a year was because he looked like a police chief going out there. And when you sat in the car with him, he drove with one hand, always dialing. And this is back in the day when the phones were pretty clunky and he had to go through his paper thing. And he's going 95 miles an hour and talking to you, yelling at you the whole time. And as staff, you learned pretty quickly when his secretary said he wants you at a meeting, at DVL, you scheduled another meeting that day. So when Greg said, let's carpool, you go, oh, I'd like to, but I've got another meeting. So you go and I'll meet you there. And I'll leave an hour and a half ahead of the meeting, not an hour. But that relentless pursuit of the project is why it got done so fast, on time. And that saved billions of dollars. Every other project gets mired in lawsuits. Not this project. Greg, got the Nature Conservancy at the end of the day. Not only did he get them into submission, they were full-throated supporters of the project. The local community out here concerned about all the trucks and the construction, naturally. They were big supporters of the project after Greg met with them relentlessly. And that's what it takes to get this kind of project done. Now, I had the good fortune of following Ron as general manager, and the not so good fortune of having 3 of the 5 worst droughts in California history in my watch. And yet, you don't really hear about them. In 2013, California had the driest year, I think it was 13, had the driest year, not in just recorded history, but they used tree rings to go back and think it was the driest year in California in 1,800 years. It was worse than the millennial drought in Australia. It was worse than the 0 hour day in South Africa. And yet you don't really hear about it. It's a footnote in history, except for us water geeks. And the reason is primarily because of this. We pulled down DVL that year down to less than 40% full. It's full today. We pulled it down. The board was getting nervous, but that's what it was for. But for that getting done, we would have been in all over the world news of suffering dramatic drought cutbacks and all of that. But it was the vision of people like Greg and Carl and the rest of the folks who got this done that we went through these droughts with discomfort, not shocking pain. And that's the real legacy that we have here. So thank you to the Taylor family. I know it was pretty hard watching that he wasn't there much. We would get calls and we'd find out he was sitting in his car calling us for an hour after he got home, because he goes, if I go in, I can't be on the phone. So I have to be on the phone for an hour and tell you what you need to do for the next week, at 9 o'clock at night. But that's what it took. So thank you very much. And we are all very grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't think Greg could ever do one thing at one time. He had to have 3 things. I never would drive with him. But okay, we're very happy today to have the Taylor family here. And I'd like to invite John Palenkas, the son-in-law of Greg Taylor, to share some thoughts about Greg's life and his legacy on behalf of the Taylor family.
I like it. Getting up now because of the sun. I'm pouring because I was sitting in the middle. Good morning. My name is John Palenkas, husband of Lorraine Taylor, the eldest child of Greg. I do have some prepared remarks, but hearing everybody's stories, my remarks you're all going to know. But I do want to deviate, go off the record from my speech, and it'll be disjointed, but you're stuck here, so I don't mind. You're talking about no one wanted to drive with him. I drove with him many times, except for my experience was the complete opposite. You guys are driving fast. To ask me, he would be driving slow, and we'd be driving down the street, and he'd see something, and then he'd get slower, and he'd go, "That's the darndest thing." And then he just keep thinking about the whole time, and then 10 minutes later he'd rationalize the whole thing and say, well, here's why they did this and that and that and that. He was solving problems that didn't even know existed. But then we'd speed up again until he saw the next one, and he'd go, well, there's another thing. And okay, and he'd solve that solution again. So it was always interesting. And you're saying you left a half hour early to meet him. Mine was the opposite. We would get there late. And I don't know, maybe it's because I was the audience, or we'd go back and forth, or I'd ask him a question and get him to thinking on a different train of thought. And it was always enjoyable to ride with him, except for it took too long. But as I said, my name's John Palinkas. I'm married to Lorraine Taylor Palinkas. And in addition to what I want to say is I'm also a Pechanga tribal member, hence the medallion here. I don't know if you're familiar with Pechanga or not. This was ancestral territory for us, Aboriginal lands. It stretched from the coast out to Riverside and beyond. And so we have our GIS department. Our GIS department, has mapped everything too. We said there were 85 different sites here. I know when the actual construction began, I think there were 300. And we know there were villages here. But so what I want to do is I want to speak as both a descendant of the Native people here in the Valley and as an admirer of Greg Taylor. And Greg will be hereinafter be referred to as Dad. But historically, the Diamond Valley Lake area was a natural drainage base. You already see the mountains here. So yeah, it was happening in its own course of action. Water would accumulate here. And with the water for our people, the plants would grow. And with the water for the animals, they could flourish. Water for our native people, we could gather food crops. With water, our tribal ancestors could hunt the animals that lived here. With water, villages were established. They were right here where the lake was. Um, and then with villages, it became larger communities that could be sustained. And our ancestors were able to remain in the region. We didn't have to venture further and do trading with other ones because everything was here that sustained us. With our and with water, our native people, they could succeed, and they have succeeded. So water for us was the key of life, and not only in the past, it's also today, thanks to everybody's efforts here, thanks to Dad's efforts here. And so we recognized it then, and so importantly, everybody recognized it now. And thanks to the water that Diamond Valley Lake now provides, the villages of the past have grown into cities today, modern cities. And those cities have now grown and blurred into larger counties. This growth, this development has all come about due to water. And that water is from here, the Diamond Valley. And on behalf of the tribe thanks all of you for that and letting us to continue to prosper. Now, it's already been referenced, and you guys, you all worked with him. I never did. But yes, he was an environmentalist. And due to his stewardship of the land, as evidenced during his time at the land law section of the California Department of Justice, the Office of the Attorney General, where he was instrumental in protecting numerous tidelands and coastal areas of California. His stewardship was extensive. However, his greatest legacy is right here at the Diamond Valley Lake, a project that leads to the antithesis of his environmentalism. It leads to growth and development. Interesting. But even though the reservoir was a mega development project, Dad and the NWD were able to maintain environmental stewardship, which is very important to him. They acquired the additional lands in Santa Rosa Plateau that was referenced. This land purchase offset the ecological disruption of the dam's construction. And more importantly, it provided a greater environmentally sensitive ecosystem of indigenous and plants and animals unique to California to continue. There are also villages over in the Santa Rosa Plateau. Those ones, again, are people. And there were really 4 gateways from our area here to the Pacific Ocean. And that reserve right there is one of the gateways that lead there. So quite significant to the tribe, to myself personally, and again, a debt of gratitude to everybody here. Okay. Now, to construct the reservation, I'm going to pass that part. But there were many legal obstacles, all that you know. But the Diamond Valley Lake Reservoir project was a monumental feat that required intelligence, fortitude, and persistence. all traits that Dad exhibited. More importantly, to accomplish the project, Dad required an equally strong and talented team. And that's what he had at MWD, a team that was as committed and as determined as he was to the mission of bringing more water to Southern California. Dad always recognized and acknowledged the people he not only worked with, but the people he partnered with for the success of the project. Per Dad, the Metropolitan Water Team, many of whom are here, deserve all the credit for their hard work and dedication that led to the creation of DVL. And so, on behalf of the extended Taylor family, we thank all those who had a role in the success of the project. Your actions have quenched California's thirst. We thank you for being here and for your accomplishments of Diamond Valley Lake. And finally, on behalf of the family and I, we just want to say, Dad, we love you.
Very nice, John. To close our program today, it's my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the board, Adon Ortega.
Thank you. Before we close the program, I'd like to call up Dylan Callaway from Assemblymember Jeff Gonzalez's office, who actually visited the reservoir yesterday for a special presentation. And if you can please come up, John, to receive the commendation. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hi. First of all. Well, on behalf of Assemblyman Jeff Gonzalez's office, we just wanted to extend the certificate of recognition for all of the work that Gregory Taylor did for this wonderful lake. We just, we want to be the best partners that we can be, and we cannot be that without people like your father-in-law. So we appreciate it, and thank you so much. And on behalf of Assemblyman Gonzalez's office, we are honored to be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much appreciation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dylan.
Okay, may I digress a second?
Yes, go ahead.
Everybody was acknowledged here. There's two people in the family who are here that were not acknowledged. There's a nephew, Mark Taylor, and my son, Keone. So I didn't want to get home and get in trouble.
All right. No, thank you for that. So thank you, Tony, for presiding over today's ceremony, as well as to all the speakers for sharing your thoughtful reflections about Greg Taylor. The idea to name this facility came from Ron Gastelum and Jeff Keitlinger and Marcia Scully, and I want to thank you for coming up with that. As chair of the board, we've been kind of on a naming frenzy here over the last year and a half. And the reason for that is that I've sensed that we're in between historical phases at Metropolitan, and all our facilities are named in such a way that reflect the history of Metropolitan. And I believe strongly that if we're about people, it's with people that we tell that story. And so we're not done yet. And so Tony's going to be very busy here for my final 1 year and 3 months in office. This dedication is more than the unveiling of a name of a structure. It's a reminder of the legacy of service, foresight, and leadership that Greg Taylor brought to Metropolitan with a lasting impact. His insistence on proactive measures to mitigate impacts has become part of Metropolitan's DNA. And you see that in other areas where we're working. You see it in the Palo Verde Valley, where we've been investing in community development and research and environmental sensitivity. You see it with our approach to the Delta Islands, where we're doing our best, whether people accept it or not, to make sure that we're leaders in habitat restoration and responsible ways of growing food. So 25 years ago, Diamond Valley Lake was dedicated at the bottom of the tower. And we had over 20,000 people show up over a weekend. We had to do it in 2 parts, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. And, we got to witness the release of the first supplies into the reservoir. So I believe it's proper that we dedicate it in Greg's honor while it's at the brim, because it's the realization of so much that has passed. And as Jeff Keitlinger explained, it's helped us get through some rough patches already. So I want to thank all of you for attending. And Next to me is the plaque that will be formalized and installed in Greg's honor in the not too distant future. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Don. You know, one thing I just finished a postdoctoral degree in theology, so I could say something religious. When you know, people think when you die you go to heaven and you stay on the like a beach in Hawaii, but you have a week of that, then you have to go to work. And so it was going through my head. Could you imagine what Greg's doing? And the fountains you're going to see, and he's going to be there waiting to tell you all about them. But he was a great guy, and I'm very honored to have been here today to honor him. We are going to have some tours of the tower right now. I think it's going to be at the registration desk right here, and he'll take groups of 20 at a time, and it takes about 30 minutes. So you're all welcome. But thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Adon, and everyone, and to honor a great soldier in water. Thank you very much.
We're going to have photos, so if I can have all the speakers and our board directors and the family come up here, we're going to get some photos with the plaque replica.